One, you're live.
Welcome to the opening line report. I'm Kelly Stewart with the man himself, Teddy Covers. My first year hosting this show, Teddy. We're going to have a lot of fun. Preseason week 1 starts now. We're going to take you all the way through the Super Bowl. And our goal is to be the first to market show here on WagerTalk TV. These preseason lines started populating a couple days ago. Teddy may have an emergency betting alert or 2 or 3 each week. We'll see what we can get from him. But Teddy, I want to get right into this because we got a lot of games and we got a little bit of time.
That's the way it works on the opening line report. We always want to yap, but the truth is, this is a show about information. My goal is to give you guys great information every week and do it first thing Monday morning so you can get in, get out, get your bets down, and know that you're coming in with solid info. So every week I'm going to go through everything that happened on Sunday. We'll talk about where my powering numbers are. We'll talk about where the market numbers are, where we expect them to move. And yes, there will be emergency betting alerts, especially in the preseason where already the lines are going absolutely nuts this morning. And we're seeing the markets move significantly on a good handful of games.
Usually on this show, we're going to start off with what did we learn from last week? Well, last week was the Hall of Fame game. Teddy, did you have anything that you took away from that game, or was it just a glorified scrimmage?
Oh, I love that game because my clients and I cashed an overbet. In fact, we cashed a 5% big ticket overbet. And I'm not going to say it was the right side. Things played out perfectly with the turnovers. The turnovers came deep in their own territory, and the Detroit's 5 turnovers ended up resulting in a whole bunch of points for the Chargers. And in fact, the Lions offense underperformed significantly from what I thought they were gonna, which may set something up for this week in the preseason. But when all was said and done, it was essentially a winner by halftime, cash in the third quarter. We like it when the big tickets come in early. And of course, the big tickets, I don't want to pat my own back, or tout my own horn, but I am number 1 all time at WagerTalk with NFL big ticket reports. So cashed another one last Thursday, and we'll see if anything steps up this week. The one that I was thinking about for a big ticket, well, the line moved 4 points overnight. So I don't know that we're going to get a big ticket on that one, but we'll talk about it. And as we go down through every game on the board every week, and Kel, I'm the nightmare in terms of corrections. We go every week through the week after the Super Bowl. Yeah, we give you a Super Bowl recap.
That is right. It's okay, Teddy. I'm already looking forward to Super Bowl. You guys have no idea. And the NFL season has just begun. We're going to go through on the Odds Logic screen, guys, by rotation order. So make sure you guys have that set up. oddslogic.com/Kelly in Vegas if you're looking for a free 1-week trial. The backup options are the WagerTalk free odds screen. If you guys are not ready to pony up to the big leagues, speaking of ponies, we've got the Colts, the Indianapolis Colts, taking on the former Baltimore, now called Baltimore Ravens, former Baltimore Colts. This interesting line move already, Teddy. Opened a pick'em. Well, it's all -1. Now we're seeing some pick'ems. Then all of a sudden you go over and you go, what is going on? We've got Superbook at 4, FanDuel at 3.5. Total is already ticked up a half a point at some of those books and a full point at the Superbook. Talk to me about Shane Steichen's squad. Kind of curious to see what's going to happen here with Anthony Richardson. Him coming out of the state of Florida, I got to watch him his last year here for the Gators, and I thought we'd see some big things from him here at the Colts. Got hurt right there out of the gate. And now we've got Daniel Jones, the failed, overpaid guy from the New York Giants.
So one thing we definitely want to remember for preseason, we're going to talk a lot about the starting quarterbacks and the backup quarterbacks. They're largely irrelevant in August. We're talking about second stringers, third stringers, fourth stringers, So when there is quarterback competition, there's a handful of teams that there's quarterback competition for the starting job. We'll talk about how it relates, but the markets certainly react to those situations. This is a situation where Baltimore opened, I wrote down the numbers on Friday. All right. Before the full market opened, there were a handful of books open, Bet Online, DK, yada, yada. There was 1.5 for Baltimore, total 34.5, 35. And obviously now we're looking with the Colts favored by more than a field goal. Big line move overnight on this ball game. And for good reason. Remember when Harbaugh was the bet-on coach in the preseason? There was a stretch over like a 7-year, 8-year span where he was like as good as it gets in August. That was then. This is now. 2003, John Harbaugh, 0-3 ATS. 2004, John Harbaugh, 0-3 ATS in the preseason. So if you're looking at long-term Harbaugh numbers, you're going to see winning, winning, winning. If you're looking at short-term Harbaugh numbers, you're going to see losing, losing, losing. When it comes to the QBs for this game, and again, much of the success, sometimes the coaches that have success in August and then don't have success somewhere else or later on has to do with the quarterback rotations. And for Baltimore, obviously Lamar Jackson. Don't know how much Cooper Rush is going to play. I think it's going to be a lot of Devin Leary in this ball game. The kid out of NC State. Meanwhile, Indy has legit quarterback competition between Richardson and Daniel Jones. And what they do when it comes to a third string and who's going to be on the field when the point spread could be decided, well, Riley Leonard, Jason Bean could get a fair bit of playing time in the second half. Now, Steichen said that he's going to give one of his two potential starters, Richardson or Jones, more playing time the 1 week, and the other one's going to get more playing time in week 2. But he didn't say which quarterback is which. From a point spread perspective, it doesn't really matter that much. Both guys playing for a starting job, and both guys veterans in that sense. So, but it's worth noting for week 2, whoever we see a lot in week 1, we're not going to see. One little note for Baltimore, and again, I try to find little notes for all the teams, despite, it's not just who the quarterback rotations might be, because a lot of coaches haven't announced it yet, and what the coaches' track records are. I try to find little notes from my perusing of all local papers this past weekend. And the Ravens, for the first time in a long time, have a new kicker not named Justin Tucker. Tyler Loop was brilliant in practice. He nailed a 56-yarder, he nailed a 60-yarder. He's the only kicker in camp, and there is urgency for Loop to get field goal attempts in the game. So Baltimore is one team that won't be going for it on fourth down when they're in field goal range. We saw a lot of fourth down conversions the other night for the Lions Chargers that were very good for my over. We're not likely to see that here with Baltimore trying to get their new kicker some in-game reps. But the money's poured in on Indy. I don't know we're going to see more Indy money from 3.5/4, but there's certainly no shortage of pros who've loaded up on the Colts in early betting action as the lines opened.
Guys, I know not everybody's into betting preseason, but we're here discussing it because there is money to be made. Teddy, really quickly, let everybody kind of know how the last few preseasons have went for you. And also, if you guys are looking for some betting tips on what to be looking for during preseason, some do's and don'ts, if you will, head over to the WagerTalk Instagram channel. Teddy put out his top 3 things you need to know for betting NFL preseason.
Sure, and the preseason has been good. We closed out last year with a 3-0 sweep in week 18. Week 3 of the preseason. We won the first week here, so we're riding a 4-0 run into week 1 of this year. I think it's 18-11 over the last 3 years or since 2022. 62% rock solid, no complaints. But I'm running good right now, Kel. I mean, I'm 78% all sports here the last 6 days. The baseball's been good. The extra inning games have been in my favor this week. Obviously, the season win report's still available. 103 and 52, 66% lifetime over the last 24 years with that report, including 17-4, 81% of the 5% big tickets. My NFL week 1, 30-11 over the last 10 years, 73%, 8-2 with the 5% big tickets. And obviously the big tickets overall have been pretty good. Number 1 all time at WagerTalk. So all plays 4% or higher, 66% since March. I'm running pretty good in a lot of different areas right now. So not a bad time to get on board. And obviously the preseason has been good for me, both this year so far and in seasons past. And not just good for me, it's good for my clients as well.
That's the most important part. All right, Cincinnati taking on the Super Bowl champs, Philadelphia. I've got my odds logic screen open here. This one open, pick 'em. You mentioned the money coming in on the Colts, a big money coming in on the Bengals. Superbook currently sitting here at 3.5. But Zach Taylor has been awful in preseason against the spread. Touch on that and tell me what you think about this matchup.
Yeah, sure. And so I had a split favorite here. Offshore, since the open -1 in the global books here in the U.S. I saw Philly -1.5 at DK at the open, total 35.5. And we've seen over money, and we've seen a whole lot of Cincinnati money. So there's certainly some, the reports out of Bengals camp You have the new DC Al Golden from Notre Dame. This is a defense that was pretty awful last year. They had something to prove. They've been showing swagger in camp, and they want to do it in the game. So we're hearing a lot of positive defensive quotes from Cincinnati. But you nailed it when it comes to Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor's coached 16 preseason games. He's won 3 of them in straight up fashion. Not a guy who really cares all that much about the W or the L. That being said, we talked about the video that I put up about how to beat the preseason, how to bet the preseason. And one of my key points in that video that's available on Instagram and all over the place, wherever you guys post it, it's up. But I talked about cluster injuries being your number one issue for bet against teams. When you have a team that has cluster injuries anywhere, they become bet against. Well, Philly's got issue at wide receiver right now. Both starters banged up already. It's not a position where they have a ton of depth. They paid their top guys. So when you have a wide receiving core that may not be very deep and may not be very good this week, you can expect a very vanilla game plan from a team that has nothing to prove in week 1 in August. And we talked about Zach Taylor and his struggles in the preseason. Not like Nick Sirianni's been that much better. Last 4 years for Sirianni, 3 straight up wins in 12 preseason games. Neither coach gives a crap about winning or losing this one. And when we talk about bet on teams, one other point that I like to make in the preseason, when you're betting on, if you want, there's lots of bet against stuff. If I'm laying more than 2 or 3 points, if I'm laying more than 2, 1 and 2 the key numbers in August, I need some bet on and some bet against. I've got bet against for the Eagles. I don't know how much bet on I have for Cincinnati right now. And of course, the Bengals, when it comes to QB rotations, we're not going to see Joe Burrow and company in this one. Jake Browning, Logan Woodside, Peyton Thorne are likely to go in some order for Cincinnati for the majority of the game here.
All right, we're going to keep it rocking and rolling so we can get through all these preseason games. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders currently, -2 at the Westgate Superbook, total 36.5. Teddy, we've seen this line flip in favor of Vegas. Talk to me about your hometown team here and what we should expect from them in this preseason game.
Let's talk emergency betting alert, because this one is number 1 on the list. And we have do we have a volume? We have a
not yet. I was going to make a fake siren. Woo, woo, woo. Guys,
Next week, I got you, Teddy. Right. Next week, I got you.
Anyhow, so the line opened here, Seattle -1.5. There were even -2s out there, total 35.5. This line has flipped towards the Raiders, and now we're seeing the Raiders -1.5 / -2. Total's been a bet up. And note that, every game we've talked about so far, we've seen over money come in for what it's worth. And this game, no exception to that rule, 35, now up to 36 / 36.5. The Raiders already up to 1.5, 2. I expect more Raiders money. All right. It's a situation here where you have Pete Carroll, who is clearly interested in winning games in August. All right. Got a great quote from Carroll talking about how winning matters. And of course, both Geno Smith's not going to get a lot of playing time here, but Aiden O'Connell, the backup, has been getting rave reviews in preseason camp. Then again, when Geno and Aiden O'Connell are both getting rave reviews, that does perhaps lead to some concerns about the defense for the Raiders. Of course, they lost Christian Wilkins. Lonnie Johnson got carted off on Saturday. Those are 2 impact losses. If you're looking at some of the preseason betting guides for the Raiders, already missing 2 guys. And of course, the quotes out of camp, they're still shuffling on the offensive line, which could be a problem against a Seattle team that could be decent up front. But here's one for the Seahawks that's worth throwing into your, again, one of the ways. It's one to file away for that. I really hope I don't lose my bet this way. If you like Seattle, long snapper concerns for the opener. They might need a temporary long snapper. They might have the fullback or Brady Russell fill in. But Russell, the quote from Russell was from Mike McDonald was, we can't afford to let him get hurt because he's the only guy we have in that role. So they could be signing a long snapper off the waiver wire, and that could be an issue. Again, week 1 of the preseason, how do these games get decided? Special teams miscue, certainly a piece of the equation. Obviously, there's intrigue with Pete Carroll and Geno returning to Lumen Field, now with members of the Raiders. The quote from McDonald's, "We're not going to be playing our starters, but we're going to compete like heck." I think Pete would appreciate that. I hope Pete gets a great he deserves it. So Seattle certainly in a situation where there could be some issues on special teams, but they're not laying down in this game. That being said, the Raiders have the QB rotation. They have the early line move. They have the motivation. Raiders have taken money already. I would not be shocked in the slightest if they take more. If you like the Raiders, I would bet them sooner rather than later. Obviously, already up to -1.5, -2. And the difference, the gulf between 2 and 3 in the preseason is enormous. So many of these games to get decided on 2-point conversions or missed 2-point conversions. Nobody plays for overtime. You have ties now in August. So +2/-2 matters. The 3 versus the 2 is worth more than the standard, you're talking about 10 cents to buy a line, by a half point, and more than that on and off a 3. In preseason, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. They're all worth more than 10 cents, at least in this bettor's opinion.
All right, shout out to the comments section here on YouTube. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us on this beautiful Monday morning. You can catch Teddy and I here every single Monday morning up until, February 9th, the Monday after the Super Bowl. Teddy, let's get into those Friday preseason games. I've got my odds logic screen open. Cleveland's taking on Carolina. This one's up to Carolina 3.5 even at the Superbook. This total has been bet up 2 points from the opener of 33.5 to 35.5. Shedeur Sanders is banged up. Kenny Pickett's banged up. Is it Dylan Gabriel time for the Browns?
Yeah, it's funny because Cleveland's got the type of quarterback rotation that everybody loves in August, except when Shedeur Sanders has arm soreness and Kenny Pickett has a hamstring. And Joe Flacco ain't going to be out there for more than a cup of coffee if he plays at all, which means it'll be lots and lots of Dylan Gabriel this week. Now, I don't know that Sanders is out. I'm expecting Pickett's not going to play. The markets aren't expecting Sanders, but even if Sanders does play, it'll be Gabriel and Sanders, 2 rookies, getting their first taste of real NFL action. The markets don't care for that at all. Carolina opened. There were 2.5s in the global markets. There were 1.5s here. 33.5 the total. Over money coming in on this one as well. And I mean, Dave Canales is a coach speak guy. Nothing but positives. That's why the players love him. But in terms of trying to find quotes that I can give from this guy, it's all good, no bad for Carolina. Andy Dalton, Jack Plummer, Ethan Garbers for Carolina. I don't know how much Bryce Young's going to play here. I wouldn't expect him to play any if he does just a little bit. And that's not necessarily a QB trio that I want to be laying a field goal with. So this had emergency betting alert potential. It's already moved to 3/3.5. I don't think it goes any higher than it already is for Carolina, given that QB rotation, even though the betting markets really want to go against Cleveland in this ballgame, given those QB injuries for Kevin Stefanski's squad.
All right, Detroit is taking on Atlanta. Detroit's taking money as well, up to 3.5 there in Vegas. Total 33.5. Not all the way across the board, but pretty much everywhere but a couple of offshores. Teddy, let's talk about that Hall of Fame game, maybe having a few reps under your belt. Does that bode well for that next preseason game? It
sure does, especially when everyone stunk in that preseason game. I'll talk about the quotes in a minute. My numbers have Detroit -1.5 at the open. Total 34/34.5 at the first books they posted. So this is the one game we've actually seen some under money. And when you read what's going on in both of these camps right now, there's a very different sense of urgency for these two teams, hence the Lions money. In preseason, if you're urgent, you're likely to win. All right. The Falcons, Penix had a couple of rough practices. Cousins a veteran. I don't know how much either guy is going to play in this game. I wouldn't expect much from Atlanta starter or from their backup QB, which means Easton Stick, Emory Jones, the other 2 QBs on the roster. Meanwhile, for Detroit, all right, they played on Thursday night. They turned the ball over 5 times. They lost 34-7, and they were not amused. In terms of at least the quarterbacks were not amused. Now, Hendon Hooker played in the second half last week. He's supposed to play in the first half this week. Kyle Allen threw a couple of picks last week. He's supposed to play the second half. That is a bet-on QB duo. The reports out of Detroit camp, and one of the reasons I like the over for the Hall of Fame game was the reports for both these guys, how well they were picking up the offense, how well they were playing in camp. Hooker said he was, quote, very disappointed in himself. He's looking to bounce back. And these two are legitimately battling for the number 2 quarterback spot behind Goff. One of the other things I talked about in that video, I don't remember if I talked about it in that video or not, but one of the other key points for preseason that I want to make, yes, starting quarterback competitions matter. But backup quarterback competitions are better because the backups are going to be on the field for longer portions of games. And when you have Hooker, veteran, Allen, veteran, both guys with something to prove, veteran QB going against a third and fourth string defense, we love the backup QB competitions. And so do the markets, obviously. That's why Detroit is taking the money that they've been taking already. I would not be surprised. Again, 3 right now. They're 3.5 popping. I would not be surprised if we see more Detroit money, especially if we get another bad report out of Penix, out of Atlanta practice today, and Penix's capabilities.
All right, Washington taking on New England. New England opened -2, hitting 2.5. The totals ticked up almost a point there in Vegas to 34.5. Teddy, New England going to be interesting with Vrabel this season. Do you think he actually wants to win his preseason game, or is he one of those old school guys that doesn't really care?
So Vrabel's an interesting story in Tennessee because his long-term results were very good as a head coach in Tennessee. That being said, year after year, the Titans had really good quarterback rotations in August. This year, well, they got Drake May and Josh Dobbs. Don't know how much either guy's going to play. I'm expecting the undrafted rookie free agent Ben Woolridge from Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. I'm expecting him to get the majority of the playing time in this ballgame. Not sure how much May or Dobbs we're going to see in this one. Vrabel, long-term winner with Tennessee in August. His first season with the Titans, 0-4 straight up, 0-4 against the spread. And oh, by the way, cluster injuries to report. The Patriots, 4 different offensive linemen got hurt last week. One of them went IR. He's out for the year. The starting center got hurt. A couple of backups, third stringer. They have issues on the offensive line right now. And that, to me, says when you have OL issues, maybe your QBs aren't going to be out there quite as long as you think they might. Maybe we'll stick the undrafted rookie free agent out there to get beat up and not the regular guys. So Vrabel, first year, long-term good. First year for Tennessee, 0-4 ATS and straight up. Clustering an offensive line. These are bet against scenarios for New England, but the Patriots are taking money. Interesting. Now for Washington, here's the quote. This is something I just cut and pasted out of an article. Washington's defense from a beat writer. Washington's defense continues to give its offense problems in training camp. A key reason, the secondary. Washington's corners are much better in press man coverage than last year's group, allowing the Commanders to play more of that look successfully. So, for what it's worth, the Washington, like Atlanta, the offense hasn't necessarily clicked so far in August. That being said, you can make a case that it's the defense that's caused the offense not to click, not just the offense being awful for the Commanders. 2.5, I'll put it this way. Commanders will be on my short list for the clients this week.
All right, a game that hasn't moved hardly at all. Opened 36. Buffalo -2.5 over the New York Giants. Teddy, nothing really to note with this Buffalo Bills team, but the Giants have, well, essentially 4 quarterbacks who could be playing in these next 4 preseason games. Break that down. How do you kind of sift through the information and make an informed result?
So this is key, all right? In the preseason, the only stuff I'm betting is when the information says bet it. There's lots of games where there's really not much there. And when there's games that there's not much there, you know what I do? You pass. Unless the line, if the line moves significantly, you look at it again. And if you find something, if you find no reason that makes sense to you for the line move, maybe you fade it. But the majority of games we're not going to play. This is one of them. I haven't found anything. Not an interesting preseason note about Buffalo at all. For the G-men, it's been very clear in camp that Russell Wilson is the guy, which means Wilson's not likely to play much, if at all, this week. There's going to be lots of Jackson Dart. We may see some Jameis Winston, some Tommy DeVito. And Winston and DeVito bet on. Anytime you have a veteran quarterback in August who's going to get reps throwing the ball downfield, they become bet on. Even a Tommy DeVito is a bet on quarterback against a third string defense in August. So, but all three of those guys have clearly struggled so far in camp. So that's not necessarily a big bet on situation. And of course, the Giants are in chalk here despite their QB competition. Buffalo opened 1.5, 2.5, 33.5 was the total. And as you mentioned, the only thing we've seen on this one, over money from those opening numbers. I want to talk about something else that I neglect. I wrote it right from my very first note, and I neglected it because I got caught up in Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones talk. There's a key concept that I want to talk about. That's joint practice sessions. A lot of these preseason games, you'll have joint practice sessions, one or two of them before the game. When they go well for a team, the urgency is off in terms of reps and the joint practice. Many coaches consider the joint practice sessions more important than the game itself. So if you have a good joint practice session, if you read those reports and they're like, oh, the so-and-so dominated in joint practice, well, that's not a bet on for the actual game. It becomes a bet against for the actual game because they're a little bit fat and happy, and the other team becomes the urgent. So a lot of these preseason joint practice sessions, I don't like to bet the game until I read about how that practice session went, because that'll give you one more edge when it comes to which team is actually motivated to play better in the game than they did in the practice session. I look to bet on the teams that did poorly in those practice sessions, and you'll read a lot of reports about them this coming week. Because obviously many of these teams before they play will have a joint practice session with their opponents, or two, or three, or two, no threes.
All right, we're going to keep going through those Saturday NFL preseason games. Houston, currently a 2.5-point underdog. They're at the Superbook in Las Vegas. Total 36. The Minnesota Vikings here, Teddy, I'm kind of curious to see what this team is made of this year. Are we going to see much of them during the preseason, or do you think O'Connell kind of keeps this team under wraps?
So opener for this, Minnesota 1.5. I had a 34 and a 35.5 is what I wrote down for openers. And I mean, Minnesota so far, the report's almost universal. Defense is dominating the offense in practice. And there's been lots of positive quotes about the defense. It may be a really good defense for Minnesota, but obviously with J.J. McCarthy as essentially a rookie quarterback, there are potentially issues. Behind him, Sam Howell, Brett Ripien, Matt Brosmer, who's not a QB. I'd be excited about backing with my money in week one. For the Texans, the starting five on offense solidified. DeMeco Ryans, there are all these questions about Houston's offensive line. DeMeco Ryans is like, well, I got the starting five. We want to see how they do in a preseason game together. Their quarterback rotation, not necessarily bet on. Obviously, you've got Stroud, but Stroud's, if he comes in, again, any starting QB this week is not going to get more than a cup of coffee, one drive. Davis Mills, Graham Mertz, Keaton Slovis. And Mertz and Slovis are not bet on QBs, in my opinion. Mills is, but I don't know how much time he's going to get. Ryans does have a good track record in August, 5-2 straight up over his first two preseasons on the job.
All right, let's get on to some of these other games here. Pittsburgh is taking on Jacksonville. The Steelers' offense is going to be interesting to watch. I'm going to go ahead and assume we're not going to see any Aaron Rodgers, and if we do, it might be for a series. Jacksonville opened -1, still pretty much -1 everywhere. Total 35.5.
Yeah, and that's really where it opened. There was a -1.5 at the open, total 35.5. I mean, this line really hasn't done anything so far, and it might not, Again, when there's no info, people don't bet it. The quotes out of Pittsburgh camp, the Steelers offense has been, quote, slow to gel. Defense has been dominant. The offense not so much. And obviously, we're not going to see Aaron Rodgers in this ballgame. We're not going to see him at all. So for Pittsburgh, when you talk about a QB room without Aaron Rodgers behind center, and of course, Tomlin's not a guy who really cares all that much. 0-3 ATS last year, although the 2 previous years, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 ATS. So there's certainly been randomness with Tomlin. 0-3 straight up in ATS last year, 6-0 straight up in ATS the previous years. And long-term, Tomlin had been a pretty good coach in August. Mason Rudolph, Will Howard's been getting good reports out of camp. Skylar Thompson, that is essentially a bet on, in my opinion, QB trio. Rudolph and Thompson, veterans, and Howard, a guy, A, with something to prove, and B, who's been playing well in camp so far. So those are positives for Pittsburgh. For Jacksonville, new coach, new coordinators, new administration. Sometimes you see some, and of course, first year, first time. So sometimes you see some growing pains and some issues. Nick Mullins came in and threw a 90-yard pick six in practice over the weekend. When you have a veteran QB that does that, all right, Nick Mullins throwing a 90-yard pick six, that's a positive for him in the next preseason game. It is. It's a QB who now has something to prove, and not the mistakes are positives, but Mullins is someone who's been around long enough that, and he's fighting for his job versus John Wolford, who's had some pretty good preseasons with the Rams, by the way. Seth Hennigan, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Memphis, was a 4-year starter at Memphis, but Hennigan could get a fair bit of playing time in the second half here. And again, when you talk about the undrafted rookie free agents getting most of the playing time in the second half, those don't tend to be bet on situations. You find the exceptions to those rules, but they don't tend to be bet on. But this line hasn't done anything. It's not doing anything right now. It may not do anything all week, but so far, not a lot of action on Pittsburgh and Jacksonville.
All right, Teddy. Dallas is an interesting line here. Open 2.5 in some shops, 2 at Superbook, 3 at some prominent offshores. Very interesting here. Total 33.5. Here's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. Micah Parsons, does any of this kind of dramatized stuff have a negative effect on the preseason?
No, but it has a negative effect on information. Micah Parsons is sucking all the oxygen out of the room for all the beat writers. All the stories are about Micah Parsons and what the team thinks about Micah Parsons, what Micah Parsons thinks about Micah Parsons, and what the coaches think about Micah Parsons, and what the beat writer thinks about Micah Parsons. So it sucks the oxygen out of the room in terms of where the information comes from, and that leaves me short on info for Dallas. To be perfectly honest, that's all I'm getting is Micah Parsons reports everywhere I look. And you talked about it. I saw a 2.5 minus 25 at the open. I saw a 3 minus a nickel. 33.5 at the open. And this is one game that hasn't seen over money for what it's worth. So many of these games have. This one hasn't. These are two teams that historically, the Cowboys haven't cared at all about preseason in recent years. They might this year, obviously, new head coach, first year, first time. But they have the joint practice session with the Rams on Tuesday. I would expect the line to move more likely based on what happens in that joint practice session than anything we've seen beforehand. And the Rams, I don't know there's a coach that cares less about winning or losing than Sean McVay. They don't play starters in August. McVay could care less about winning or losing. Last year, they went 3-0 straight up, 3-0 ATS. They faced 3 other teams that didn't care either. They went 0-3 ATS in 2023. And that's the beauty of the preseason is when you're looking at a bet against coach, he's got to be going against a bet on a team that cares about winning. And if you're going to find a good reason to bet against them, and Dallas doesn't care either. Now, it is worth noting Matthew Stafford hurt. He hasn't played yet. He hasn't practiced yet. McVay's quote about Stafford, he's not going to return to the joint practice against the Cowboys on Tuesday in Oxnard. Quote, it truly is a week-to-week thing. What I don't want to do is set a timeline. I know he's making good progress. And, of course, for the Rams and McVay, the QB rotation when there is no Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Stetson Bennett, again, doesn't excite you in September, but in August, that's an okay duo.
All right, Teddy. Tennessee up to a 1.5-point favorite, total 35 here versus Tampa Bay. We're going to have a Cam Warren sighting here on Saturday night.
We might, and again, 1.5 at the open, 34.5. And really, I mean, this is not a line that's doing a whole lot. If you notice, a lot of the bigger moves were coming in the early games. Indy, Baltimore, Cincy, Philly got hit. Seattle, Vegas got hit. Those are the Thursday games. Washington, New England got hit today. Detroit, Atlanta got hit. And then really Carolina, Cleveland got hit. That was up to 3. I would have used an emergency bet alert on that, but that one got bet up to 3 right before we got on air. It's worth noting with Cleveland, Carolina, there is a 2.5 still at DraftKings. That won't be there in an hour, I don't think. So if you're interested in laying, that's the place to do it. And that's one of the benefits of having that Odds Logic live odds screens. You can see, hey, this is where I want to bet this right now. As long as you have multiple accounts, which of all the things you need to do as a better trying to have success, having multiple accounts is the single most important thing that you can do. It gives you access to free half points every time you try. When it comes to Tennessee and Tampa, so every report out of Tennessee has been, we had our offense is mid from Cam Ward midweek. That was midweek. On Sunday, the practice report from yesterday was Callahan blew the whistle and expressed his frustration to the team before having them run. Their offense isn't working yet. A quote from J.C. Latham, the tackle. We were 3-14, so any hint, sign, whatever of last year that carries over. Anyone on the team is going to say something about it. He said about the frustration surrounding Sunday's offense performance. But make no mistake about it, Tennessee is a long, long way from being a finished product right now on the offensive side of the football. And when it comes to QB rotations for the Titans, obviously Cam Ward's the guy. I don't know how much playing time he's going to get. Will Levis, Brandon Allen, Tim Boyle behind him. And again, from an August perspective, that's a decent quote. That's a decent trio. For Tampa, these guys have a joint practice with the Titans on Thursday. Not going to see Baker. Baker's been sitting out just like Matthew Stafford's been sitting out. He's expected to return to practice this week. The QB rotation for Tampa with no Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, Michael Pratt, Connor Bazelak, the undrafted rookie free agent. That's not a bet-on trio, in my opinion. Now, Bowles, 2-1 straight up ATS each of the last 3 years. Did he go 0-3 straight up on ATS in 2022? I got him as a neutral rating for August. Not a bet-on guy, not a bet-against guy for Tampa. But Tampa's certainly not a team in this instance. Well, let's put it this way. Tennessee's laying in Tampa for a reason, and that has everything to do with the urgency and with the QB rotation for the Titans.
Okay, the Green Bay Packers opened up as a 2-point favorite. Pretty much 2 still across the board. Total ticked up 1.5 to 35.5, at least there in Vegas, Teddy. Green Bay got banged up here, yet they are still the favorite. Is that because the Jets are just that abysmal?
So the reports in the Jets camp was, hey, the defense looked pretty good. The running game was there. Josh Fields was able to scramble out of the pocket, and the passing game has been completely ineffective. Which is just like the Jets last year with Aaron Rodgers. So an ineffective passing game, and those reports, obviously Justin Fields has something to prove. It's a veteran QB, and again, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get. I have not seen a quote on that yet. Those quotes tend to come out today, tomorrow for playing time. But Tyrod Taylor, the backup, and then you're looking at Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook, 2 guys who will be making their NFL debuts. I think Martinez played in the preseason last year. I think he did, but not much action, not much experience for the Jets at the quarterback position. You talked about Green Bay, and Green Bay clearly, and again, I saw 2s and 1.5s at the open, 34, 33.5 as the totals. And for Green Bay, there is already injury concerns at a couple of different positions. And really, I mean, the reports I got out of Green Bay is multiple injuries, significant injury list. And in a preseason week 1 game, when you have a significant injury list already, you ain't putting starters in the lineup. So I'm not sure how much bet on Green Bay is for this game. Matt LaFleur in August, and, you look at his track record, and of course, that sort of thing. Malik Willis, Sean Clifford, Taylor Elgersema from Canada as the third. LaFleur, 2-1 straight up ATS each of the last 2 years. However, the 2 years before that, 1-5 straight up in ATS. So it's not a consistent track record of success in August for Matt LaFleur and the Packers.
All right, Kansas City taking on Arizona. Both teams with some wide receiver injuries there, Teddy. Chiefs -1.5, 36.5 currently. That total has been bet up. Opener 35. Kind of curious here because if you're looking at a couple of different shops on the odds logic screen, Superbook is the highest at 36.5. Are they getting ahead of the market here? Or do you think they're just generally taking over money?
I'm confident that they took over money. I mean, in the preseason, books aren't going to have opinions on the lines. It's where they're going to respond to action, and they're going to move quickly when they see action. I'm surprised at this over money. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't bet it. KC was -1.5 at the open, 35.5 at the open. And you talked about the injuries. Both these teams have injuries, significant injuries to their receiving core already. Kansas City, both starters. The whole starting core is hurt. And when you talk about a team like KC that's a little bit top heavy in terms of salary, the receiver depth isn't there. So when you have a bunch of guys hurt at the top, that puts the second stringers, the first stringers, and those guys can't get hurt. It's going to be a lot of guys you never heard of and aren't going to make the roster in the second half of this ballgame on the field for Kansas City. And a similar story for the Cardinals. They have a limited wide receiver depth. Harrison's hurt already. I would not be surprised if both these teams hand the ball off a whole lot in the preseason opener on Saturday. And preseason totals can be a little bit random, but this is a game I would expect under before I expect it over. I'm surprised the total is as high as it is and that it's holding as high as it is. We haven't seen anything going when it comes to under money come in for any of these ball games. It's been over money or nothing for the vast majority, and this is no exception to that rule.
All right, over 2,000 people watching us live right now, Teddy, here on a beautiful Monday morning. The NFL season is back. We've got 3 more games to get through today. We've got the Denver Broncos. Wow, taking some money. This missed the emergency betting alert here. San Francisco opened 1. Superbook now up to 3. Let's take a look at FanDuel. They're 3 as well as DraftKings. This one was 34, now 34.5. Almost across the board. Oddslogic.com/Kelly in Vegas. If you guys want to hop on there for a 7-day free trial. Teddy, let's talk about these 2 teams. I don't have a lot worth noting here for the preseason, but we know you do.
And I would not be surprised if Denver takes more money. All right. If you want it, we're not going to see buyback on San Fran. So we can emergency betting alert this one as well. We've missed the best of it. This had potential to be a 5-star for me last night, a big ticket. I looked at it. I'm like, let's see what it looks like tomorrow morning. And then the line moved 4 points overnight. Oh, well, it's not going to be, we may still release it, but we're certainly not going to be, and I doubt we will. But we may still release it if the information continues to come in the direction. The information is all Denver so far for this one. But after a 4-point line move, there's no way it's a 5%. But nonetheless, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes higher. I really wouldn't. The Broncos defense has, and of course, this line opened. San Fran won. Here in the States, it was San Fran off in the global books. It was San Fran as a favorite. Here in the States, it was Denver as the favorite. Total open 34.5. Total hasn't moved, but the money's poured in on the Broncos. San Fran, there's really cluster injuries everywhere. Injuries everywhere. All right, a wide receiver has injured, lots of injuries, but the 49ers just suffered through an injury-riddled disaster of a season. Nobody who's banged up is going to play. It's going to be a lot of guys you haven't heard of and a lot of guys that may not make the roster. For Denver, all the reports out of camp is how this defense is dominating. That being said, they have some issues in terms of the linebacking core. Drew Sanders got hurt. Alex Singleton got hurt. Dre Greenlaw just limped off. So Denver's defense has been elite in camp, but that may also be speaking to the offense. That being said, we're not going to see Niners money. The Niners don't care, and they're banged up. So, yes, this line's already moved. It could move more. Denver's the only way I can bet it. And obviously the markets have, I should have bet this. I should have given it to the clients last night. And I didn't. And when you lose 4 points about line value, in August, sometimes you still have to make plays after losing some line value. You have to, or else you won't find anything because the markets move really quickly. But After 4 points, it was just there's no step up play after you lose 4 points of value. Not a chance. I can do that if it's a play for the clients. It'll be a 2% or a 3%, a lower end selection. And at 3, I probably won't get there. I might still, but I probably won't.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. The Dolphins are headed to Chicago to take on the Bears. Bears 2.5-point favorite. Seen some over money here from the opener of 35.5 up to 37. We've seen, it's interesting because the graphic says Miami open 2.5. I'm here on the odds logic screen. Teddy says Chicago open 2.5. Kind of tell me some thoughts on this one. I don't know what to make of this Bears team, and I'm going to go ahead and assume we're not going to see Tua for the Dolphins. Give me some insight on this matchup.
So I saw Miami. I wrote down Miami 2.5 as my opener as well. So there was a big line move on this one early toward Chicago, or when the markets matured. Other books put Chicago as a favorite, and the markets have accepted that. And for Miami, Tua's looking amazing. All the reports out of camp are Tua, wow, Tua, blow you away. Tua hitting the ball into tight windows. But he's not going to play in this game, Zach Wilson, Quinn Ewers, the 6th rounder out of Texas, Brett Gabbert. That's not necessarily a bet on QB trio, especially because Wilson's not going to get much playing time. That being said, the Bears have the type of quarterback rotation that people like. Caleb Williams, obviously something to prove. Behind him, Tyson Bagent and Case Keenum, 2 veterans. All right. That being said, see how much time those guys get. It could be a lot of Austin Reed in this ball game for Chicago. Haven't seen the quote yet, but we're going to pay attention to what we hear about Austin Reed. He was 12 of 16 for 123 yards and 1 touchdown last August. So lots of reports from Chicago about how the offense is struggling in camp. All right. Quote, the Bears are 75% of the way through installing Ben Johnson's new offense. 12 total installs where the team aims to finish by the end of next week. There's been progress for Caleb Williams. Quote, we've seen very positive results from the pre-snap stuff. This is from the offensive coordinator, Declan Doyle. He's continuing to progress post-snap. And then on Sunday, that was on Saturday's report. On Sunday, they had multiple delay of game penalties and all kinds of pre-snap miscues. So the offense isn't installed yet. The quarterbacks are struggling with the new offense. They're having issues pre-snap, and they're having issues post-snap. This could be a cluster. It really could be for Chicago. That being said, there's urgency for the Bears that there isn't for the Dolphins in this one, and that's certainly reflected, perhaps, in the big line move towards Chicago from the opener.
All right, I want to just shout out everybody in the comments section. We love you guys for hanging out with us here on a beautiful Monday morning. Even over on X, people are saying this is what they needed to get their week going. LFG, you guys know what that means. All right, Teddy, last game for Sunday, August 10th, which is crazy. It's almost a week away. 4:05 p.m. Eastern here. New Orleans, 2-point favorite, but Superbook went down to 1.5 there since we started recording. 40. This Monday morning, guys, we're going to have lots of coffee this season. 36 is the total here, even though this one opened up at 34.5. Let's talk about this QB battle that's going to be going on in New Orleans this year. I mean, this team is not favored in any games all season long, but I have a feeling the preseason could be interesting here.
So we should emergency betting alert this game. New Orleans is going to take the money. All right. They're already starting to take the money. Dooley, Saints are likely because of the QB battle in New Orleans. And because the Chargers played last week and everything went so swimmingly for them, the urgency isn't there. I expect the Saints to take money. I would not be surprised if they, again, there's 1.5s out there now. I don't think that'll be that case all that much longer for New Orleans. So this is an emergency betting alert territory. And New Orleans was 2.5 at the open, 34.5. So another game where we've seen over money. Before I break this game down any further, though, I do want to say, guys, we really appreciate all of you watching live, all of you watching on replay. Obviously, the show gets a ton of views on replay. I only ask for one thing. If you like the show, hit that like button. Thank you. Done. Problem solved. It makes all the difference in the YouTube algorithms. We appreciate all the comments. And every week, both Kelly and I will get into the comment section. And I reply to basically everyone that says anything. So I appreciate the comments below. That's, of course, on the YouTube when it gets replayed on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to the WagerTalk YouTube channel, we just passed 210,000 subscribers you haven't done so, you're getting alerts every time shows like this go live, which we will do 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern every Monday morning now throughout the football season until the Monday after the Super Bowl, when you can be hungover and watch us one last time before spring and summer begin. So the likes, the follows, the comments make all the difference. Thank you. And of course, visit my page, wt.buzz/TC. If you want to get on board for a preseason package, for a full season package, we got a great deal now. Buy 2 months, get the third one free. I always encourage people, don't buy a play. Don't ever buy a play. Get a package and let me show you what I can do for you over the long term. If you don't like me, there's lots of other cappers, successful cappers at WagerTalk.com that you can get involved with. When we talk about the Saints and the Chargers and the QB rotations for this one, well, let's see. This is a legitimate quarterback battle for New Orleans. Tyler Shuck versus Spencer Rattler versus Jake Haener. One of them's going to be the number one. One's going to be the number two. One's going to be the number three. And there's no particular pecking order right now. So all three QBs have got to show what they can do in August. Obviously, have a new coaching staff in New Orleans. So there's a fair bit of urgency for them. And there's no urgency for the Chargers. Harbaugh doesn't care. And they're coming off a blowout win in a game they didn't even want to play. So like I said, I do expect money to come for the Saints. There's already been a little money. I would not be surprised if we see more. I'd be surprised if we don't see more. And that's why we're emergency betting alert New Orleans right now. If you want to get the Saints, bet them sooner rather than later, in this bettor's opinion.
And you're going to get all of Teddy's opinions this season. I'm going to try to chime in every once in a while, but we are on a time crunch because right after us is Wager Talk today. I'm going to be joining in today, talk about some of the Vegas contests. Teddy, are you getting involved in any of those contests? I know you've done well in seasons past.
So I don't do any contests anymore. Not a one. And I'll tell you why. So I did a contest, I think it was 2 or 3 years. So I found that trying to pick 5 games was messing up my head. And you're thinking about the contest and you're thinking about what I can do for the clients. And really, it's not about picking 5 games a week. It's about finding a handful of good bets. Most weeks, I don't have 5 bets for the clients.
Same.
So, and the other thing that I found that I got a lot on my plate come football season. And that time I entered a contest, we missed a week. I missed entering plays. And that's just like throwing money away. I was angry with myself, and I said, I'm not doing this again until I retire. So someday when I retire, I'll do contests again. Not in the modern era. I got too much shit going on, and contests aren't my priority. Is not winning a stupid contest or a valuable contest or a great contest. That's nice talking points. My priority is picking winners for the clients. That's what I got to do.
Love it, love it, love it. Teddy, I will see you bright and early next Monday morning for preseason week 2. Good luck to you. Good luck to me because I'm going to be tailing you. And good luck to all of you guys there at home. We'll catch you guys out here soon. Teddy's got his QR code on his cup. If you guys want to put your phone right up to it, take you right there to Teddy's homepage.